Prabhu Nityananda Bhaja Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's class. It's from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 5, and texts 15, 16, 17, and 18, 15 through 18. We're very fortunate this morning to have His Grace Balabhadra Prabhu, ISKCON Atlanta. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna,
Jai.
Prabhu. So my base was
So
Prabhupada.
please accept my glories to Prabhupada. So he's giving the class this morning. Hare Krishna. It's all yours.
Okay, let's get on my spectacles. Hopefully I can see. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 5, starting with text 15. Sarvaga Ananta Vibhu Vaikuntadidam Krishna Krishna Avatarera Tahani Vishram. That Vaikuntha region is all-pervading, infinite, and supreme. It is the residence of Lord Krishna and his incarnations. Text 16. Tahara Upari Bhage Krishna Lokant Kyati Dwaraka Mathura Golkula Trividatve Stiti. In the highest region of that spiritual sky is a spiritual planet called Krishna Loka. It has 3 divisions, Dwaraka, Mathura, and Gokula. Text 17. Savopari Sri Gokula Vajalokadam Shri Goloka Sweta Dvipa Vrindavana Nam. Sri Gokula, the highest of all, is also called Braja, Goloka, Sweta, Dvipa, and Vrindavana. Text 18. Sarvaga Ananta Vibhu Krishna Tanusama Uparyadho Vyapiyache Nahika Niyama. Like the transcendental body of Lord Krishna, Gokula is all-pervading, infinite, and supreme. It expands both above and below, without any restriction. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Jiva Goswami, the great authority and philosopher in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, has discussed the abode of Krishna in his Krishna Sandarbha. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord refers to my abode. Srila Jiva Goswami, examining the nature of Krishna's abode, refers to the Skanda Purana, which states, Yayata bhuvi vartante puryo bhagavata priya tas tata santi vaikunte tatal lilaratam adrita. The abodes of Godhead in the material world, such as Dwaraka, Mathura, and Gokula, are facsimiles representing the abodes of Godhead in the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha Dham. The unlimited spiritual atmosphere of that Vaikuntha Dham is far above and beyond the material cosmos. This is confirmed in the Swayambhuva Tantra, in a discussion between Lord Shiva and Parvati regarding the effect of chanting the mantra of 14 syllables. There it is stated, Nanakalpa lata kirnam vaikuntam yapakam smarit ada samyam gunanam cha prakriti sarvakaranam. While chanting the mantra, one should always remember the spiritual world. which is very extensive and full of desire trees that can yield anything one desires. Below that Vaikuntha region is the potential material energy, which causes the material manifestation. The places of the pastimes of Lord Krishna, such as Dwaraka, Mathura, and Vrindavan, eternally and independently exist in Vaikuntha Loka. They are the actual abodes of Lord Krishna, and there is no doubt that they are situated above the material cosmic manifestation. The abode known as Vrindavan or Gokula is also known as Goloka. The Brahma Samhita states that Gokula, the highest region of the kingdom of God, resembles a lotus flower with thousands of petals. The outer portion of that lotus-like planet is a square place known as Svetadvipa. In the inner portion of Gokula, there is an elaborate arrangement for Sri Krishna's residence with his eternal associates such as Nanda and Yashoda. That transcendental abode exists by the energy of Sri Baladev, who is the original whole of Sesha or Ananta. The Tantras also confirm this description by stating that the abode of Sri Ananta Deva, the plenary portion of Baladeva, is called the kingdom of God. Vrindavan Dham is the innermost abode within the granular realm of Svetadvipa, which lies outside of the boundary of Gokula Vrindavan. According to Jiva Goswami, Vaikuntha is also called Brahmaloka. The Narada Pancharatra, in a statement concerning the mystery of Vijaya, describes Tat Sarvopari Goloke Tatra Lokopari Soyam Vihare Paramanandi Govindo Tula Nayaka. The predominator of the gopis, Govinda, the principal deity of Gokula, always enjoys himself in a place called Goloka, in the topmost part of the spiritual sky. From the authoritative evidence cited by Jiva Goswami, we may conclude that Krishna Loka is the supreme planet in the spiritual sky, which is far beyond the material cosmos. For the enjoyment of transcendental variety, the pastimes of Krishna, there have three divisions. And these pastimes are performed in the three modes of Dwaraka, Mathura, and Gokula. When Krishna descends to this universe, he enjoys the pastimes in places of the same name. These places on earth are none different from those original abodes, for they are facsimiles of those original holy places in the transcendental world. They are as good as Sri Krishna himself and are equally worshipable. Lord Chaitanya declared that Lord Krishna, who presents himself as a son of the king of Braja, is worshipable, and that Vrindavan Dham is equally worshipable. Om Agyanatimirandasya Jananjanan Salakaya Chaksu Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Maha Shri Chaitanya Nobistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamaya Tatate Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Hari Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So obviously this is a very elevated topic, very detailed topic being described here. And as I was meditating on it this morning, I thought, how can I adequately try to discuss this information? To the point where I thought, maybe I shouldn't talk about this information. It's just so deep and far beyond my comprehension. Obviously, I can't speak from any realized position, because having been separated from the spiritual world for so many lifetimes, it's almost like it's a dream. It's like How could I or any of us have ever really been there to experience this incredible situation? But as always, Krishna has a plan. So it just reminded me of one of my favorite chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I'll get to in a second. And it's called The Description of the Kingdom of God. And just that title, when I first saw it, it was so interesting. Description of the Kingdom of God. And as we all know, in most religions, especially from the Abrahamic religions, they talk about heaven. And heaven is something, according to biblical descriptions, and from the first chapter of the Bible, heaven was created by God in the beginning, just like in our scriptures. The heavens were created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He expanded from his spiritual abode to the various expansions. Ultimately, Mahavishnu, universe is coming from Mahavishnu, and within those universes are the upper, middle, and lower planetary systems, the upper planetary systems being called Svargaloka, or the heavenly realm. So most people have no concept that there is another realm beyond the so-called heavenly realm. So in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 20, Parastasmat tu bhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana yasa sarveshu bhuteshu na syatsu na vinashati. Yet there is another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. And then he also says, text 21, Avyakto shara idyuktas tam ahu paramam gatim yam prapya nanivartante tad dhamma paramam mama. That which the Vedantas describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which having attained it, one never returns, that is my supreme abode. So Krishna gives us this idea of the supreme abode beyond this material world, even though there's heavenly realms within this material world, fantastic realms. And even below the earthly realm, it's called the area called subterranean heavenly planets, where material enjoyment is broadly expanded to the point where there is no understanding of God, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the spiritual sky, as described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, third canto, and I want to take a few moments and read a few of the verses and one purport, because it's so beautiful. Let me, before reading that, yesterday we were having a discussion in our reading, and Parikshit Prabhu happened to be there, and Sri Bhagavat, Brihad Bhagavatamrita we were reading from. And we discussed at the end about the conception of enjoying and relishing. You remember that discussion, Parikshit? Enjoying and relishing.
Yeah, I do remember. Yeah.
And Parikshit gave us a conclusive point saying that the concept of enjoying borders on sense gratification if we're not careful in our devotional life, because we see it mentioned enjoying, but Prabhupada was explaining to us yesterday that the highest developed devotees, spiritually advanced devotees, they enjoy on a very high level. And then the term relishing means, and I actually had a nice reference to that. I think I should share it with you. Relishing, in contrast, relishing pertains to a deeper, more spiritual experience. It involves savoring the sweetness of devotional service and the presence of the divine. When one relishes their connection with Krishna or engages in bhakti devotional service, it transcends mere enjoyment. Relishing is about experiencing the joy that comes from devotion, love, and surrender to God. It signifies a deeper appreciation for spiritual truths and practices, where the devotee finds fulfillment in serving Krishna and in the company of other devotees. I just found it very encouraging that here we are together, 15 or 20 devotees. And what is our goal today? Our goal is, in my humble opinion, based on what I've been looking at, is not to enjoy this class. Because enjoying, as Parikshit pointed out, if we're not careful, it borders on to sense gratification, which Srila Prabhupada warns us and guides us away from that. Trying to enjoy, in a sense gratificatory manner, Krishna consciousness, but to relish, and specifically, the first principle of devotional service, Shravana, hearing. And the verse we were reading yesterday, I don't remember exactly, it was, O thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam. It didn't say, O thoughtful men, enjoy Srimad Bhagavatam. It said, O thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the ripened fruit of all Vedic literature. So we have the permission, we have, excuse my voice, we have the permission, the authority to relish, of course, if we're thoughtful, because the verse says, oh, thoughtful men. So I know all the devotees here are very thoughtful. So we can relish what we hear. We may not understand it. And that was my dilemma this morning. I was like confused. I don't understand all of this, the spiritual world. I don't remember the spiritual world. It's very difficult to speak with any authority on the spiritual world. We can outline the different points that are being made about Goloka, Gokula, and all those things, but to truly understand. So again, it brought me back to, again, one of my favorite chapters in the Bhagavatam, and I want to share with all of you together some of these verses and one purport and a few points from the purport. So this is third canto, chapter 15, starting with text number 12. There's only a few verses, so it won't take too much time. And I'll just do the English. And remember, your goal, my goal, our permission is to relish. We don't need to speculate. Just hear it, relish it, and see if it sparks something in your heart. And I'm hoping that my dear godbrother, Vishnu Prabhu, can help us in trying to understand some of this. He has a very deep understanding of these topics. So hopefully we'll have a nice, relishable discussion this morning. Lord Brahma said, my four sons, Sanaka, Sanatan, Sanandana, and Sanakumara, who were born from my mind, are your predecessors. Sometimes they travel throughout the material and spiritual skies without any definite desire. And this is about the four Kumaras when they're going to the spiritual sky. After thus traveling all over the universes, they also entered into the spiritual sky, for they were freed from all material contamination. In the spiritual sky, now this is where it begins to describe. So please listen very attentively to hear these descriptions. In the spiritual sky, there are spiritual planets known as Vaikunthas, which are the residents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his pure devotees, and are worshipped by the residents of all material planets. In the Vaikuntha planets, all the residents are similar in form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all engage in devotional service to the Lord without desires for sense gratification. Text 15. In the Vaikuntha planets is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the original person and who can be understood through the Vedic literature. He is full of the uncontaminated mode of goodness, with no place for passion or ignorance. He contributes religious progress for the devotees. Text 16. In those Vaikuntha planets, there are many forests which are very auspicious. In those forests, the trees are desire trees. And in all seasons, they are filled with fruits and flowers and fruits, because everything in Vaikuntha, everything in the Vaikuntha planets is spiritual and personal. And just a small segment of this purport, Prabhupada says that there is no difference between the tree and the animal, or the animal and the man. Here the word murtimat indicates that everything has a spiritual form. Formlessness, as conceived by the impersonalist, is refuted in this verse. In the Vaikuntha planets, although everything is spiritual, everything has a particular form. The trees and the men have form. And because all of them, although differently formed, are spiritual, there's no difference between them. Text 17. This is a very sweet verse. So listen carefully. In the Vaikuntha planets, the inhabitants fly in their airplanes, accompanied by their wives and consorts, and eternally sing of the character and activities of the Lord, which are always devoid of all inauspicious qualities. While singing the glories of the Lord, they deride even the presence of the blossoming Madhavi flowers, which are fragrant and laden with honey. Text 18. When the king of bees hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, the cuckoo, the crane, the chakravaka, the swan, the parrot, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. Text 19. Although flowering plants like the mandara, kunda, kudabaka, utpala, champaka, arna, punaga, nagakeshara, bakula, lily, and parijata are full of transcendental fragrance, they are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulsi. For Tulsi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulsi leaves. I have to tell you, this is really one of my favorite verses. I love the phrasing here. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha travel in their airplanes made of lapis lazuli, emerald and gold. Although crowded by their consorts, who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charm. So there's several other verses, but I want to get to the one with the purport because I don't want to take too much of your time. This would be verse number 23. It is very much regrettable that unfortunate people do not discuss the description of the Vaikuntha planets, but engage in topics which are unworthy to hear and which bewilder one's intelligence. Those who give up the topics of Vaikuntha and take to talk of the material world are thrown into the darkest region of ignorance. Purport. The most unfortunate persons are the impersonalists who cannot understand the transcendental variegatedness of the spiritual world. They're afraid to talk about the beauty of the Vaikuntha planets because they think that variegatedness must be material. Such impersonalists think that the spiritual world is completely void, or in other words, that there is no variegatedness. This mentality is described here as ku kata mati ni, intelligence bewildered by unworthy words. The philosophies of voidness and of the impersonal situation of the spiritual world are condemned here because they bewilder one's intelligence. How can the impersonalists and the void philosophers think of this material world, which is full of variegatedness, and then say that there is no variegatedness in the spiritual world? It is said that this material world is the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So unless there is variegatedness in the spiritual world, how can there be temporary variegatedness in the material world? That one can transcend this material world does not imply that there is no transcendental variegatedness. Here in the Bhagavatam, in this verse particularly, it is stressed that people who try to discuss and understand the real spiritual nature of the spiritual sky and the Vaikunthas are fortunate. The variegatedness of the Vaikuntha planets is described in relation to the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. But instead of trying to understand the spiritual abode and the spiritual activities of the Lord, people are more interested in politics and economic developments. They hold many conventions, meetings, and discussions to solve the problems of this worldly situation where they can remain for only a few years, but they are not interested in understanding the spiritual situation of the Vaikuntha world. If they are at all fortunate, they become interested in going back home, back to Godhead. But unless they understand the spiritual world, they rot in this material darkness continuously. So that, as I said, when I woke up, I was thinking, how can I really talk about this spiritual sky? So detailed, so complicated. But after going back through this reading that we just did and coming to this purport, and Srila Prabhupada is giving us, again, the right, the authority, the privilege, the opportunity to hear. And if we don't hear, it's regrettable. And even worse, if we as devotees utilize our hearing opportunity to hear about material aspects of how we have to push on this movement. Now, that's not controversial, but it might just be, to me, sensitive to me, that a lot of our time in this movement is spent dealing with the management of the movement. Now, that's just part of what we have to do. And if we do it in Krishna consciousness, it doesn't bewilder us. But if we're not careful, we can be sidetracked by all of that. Money, management, organizing, flow charts, so many different things. And we get lost. And we don't spend enough time hearing the glories of the Lord and hearing about the spiritual world, realizing that we don't understand it. Here's something that we truly don't understand, and we spend probably, at least for me, not enough time hearing about it. Understanding it truly comes from Krishna. But my responsibility is to utilize the hearing propensity to just hear about it and relish it. Oh, thoughtful men, relish this cream of all Vedic knowledge, Srimad Bhagavatam. We may not understand it. I know in my case, I don't quite understand the spiritual sky, but I can hear about it and I can relish it. I can remember how wonderful the verses I just read to you, because I've been reading those verses since my Brahmacharya days, and it's always given me kind of a jolt of happiness, especially when it says the airplane is made of lapis lazuli. I don't even know what that is. It's like lapis lazuli. Just hearing that just makes me happy. Emeralds and gold, and just you can visualize it. Because within this material world, we see beautiful things made of gold, and like a lot of our temples have golden altars. And so we have some semblance, some little small experience of something beautiful. But you have to magnify that way beyond our conception to spiritual sky. So you can see it here, how beautiful things attract people. And just imagine how attractive the spiritual world must really be in Vaikuntha, Krishna Loka, Goloka, Mathura. We can't even imagine, but we can hear. That's a great fortune. What Prabhupada has given us, we who have come from such a fallen situation in material history, where everyone is confused, there's violence everywhere, strife everywhere, suffering everywhere, floods everywhere, disasters everywhere, fires everywhere, wars everywhere. What a miserable place. So every day, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with all this negativity. The whole atmosphere, because it's in the airwaves, it's in the news, it's in the internet, it's everywhere. The first thing that's shown in all media is the worst thing that happened the night before, the absolute worst. As they say in the media field, if it bleeds, it leads. But in Krishna consciousness, it's the opposite. We wake up in the morning, we should wake up in the morning with a robust plan for hearing and chanting. And what I do personally every day, and I was telling Vishnu Prabhu the other day, the first thing I do is I read a little bit of Bhagavad Gita just to get my brain in order. First, offer obeisances and all that. Then I read something from Bhagavad Gita. Then I start my chanting. And so it just makes me personally feel more inspired. That's my little sadhana. before chanting, just to get my mind out of that dream state. Sometimes I get so frustrated with dreams, I kind of wish, don't let me dream anymore. So distracting. But then just to get myself back on track, I want to hear what Prabhupada has to say early in the morning, and then boom. So we should have a plan. If you don't plan to succeed in Krishna consciousness, you're planning to fail. You have to have a plan. I like this one phrase I heard years ago. You miss 100% of the targets you don't set. You obviously missed them because you didn't set it. So Prabhupada always encourages us to have a focus, have a plan. I remember as a brahmachari, I had a plan. The plan was to wake up at 2:30 in the morning, chant most of my rounds before Mangalarti. So after Mangalarti, I could read Srimad Bhagavatam. And there were other devotees like that, like Vaishnavisika was there in Atlanta at the time, and Savas, and just different devotees. We just focus with a plan written down. And I even had a system, because during those days we didn't have cell phones. It's like the 70s. So I had this little recorder, and I put it on timer. I had a timer and a recorder. And the timer would turn on the recorder and wake me up, because I really wanted to follow that plan, because it was so relishable. Oh, thoughtful man, relish. It was so relishable that time in the morning, hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. So if you don't have a plan, to distract yourself from all the mundane noise and even the ISKCON noise. There's a lot of ISKCON noise, especially if you go on the internet. There's tons of ISKCON related devotee noise. And what I mean by that, conversations that are totally useless, totally useless, have no real value. Somebody's criticizing another person, somebody's criticizing of this or that, and taking up all that space. So I mentioned to devotees once in a Facebook post, we should flood the internet with Krishna Katha, Prabhupada Katha, flood it. Every day, if you want to go on the internet, put something there. I have a wonderful service that I created for myself, which is posting a Prabhupada lecture every day for the devotees, every single day. And I get a lot of responses from devotees saying, thank you, Prabhu. And if I miss one day, someone says, Prabhu, what happened? What happened? What happened? I'm looking forward to my Prabhupada lecture. Flood it. Let people hear. And devotees have to be very, very careful not to be distracted away from the wonderful opportunity we've been blessed by from Srila Prabhupada, which is to hear. So he's taken the time to research Srila Prabhupada. He's taken the time to document, to put down in writing in his books everything we need to know. We don't have to speculate. We cannot do it any better than Prabhupada did it. It's absolutely fantastic. So just to relish and hear. So again, this one verse that I just read the purport is, it is very much regrettable that unfortunate people do not discuss the description of the Vaikuntha planets, but engage in topics which are unworthy to hear and which bewilder one's intelligence. Those who give up the topics of Vaikuntha and take to talk of the material world are thrown into the darkest region of ignorance. So it's saying it's regrettable that unfortunate people, which may include some of us, I'm sure it includes me. I'm, very unfortunate soul. I spend too much time in trying to understand the material society, and sometimes in context to how to spread Krishna consciousness, how to do different things, how to have festivals, how to have Zoom calls and conferences and all that. But we should make sure that the purpose is to understand Krishna consciousness as Srila Prabhupada gave it to us. And I emphasize that. Understand Krishna consciousness as Srila Prabhupada revealed it. That is the purpose of our life. We can never conceive of something more efficacious in the process of spreading Krishna consciousness than what Srila Prabhupada demonstrated, what he articulated, what he documented. Just following that process. And hearing is so critical. So as I said from the beginning, discussing the spiritual sky, we can do it from an academic perspective. We don't have much, maybe some of you do, personal experience of the spiritual sky at this point, but by Prabhupada's mercy, we're able to hear about it and relish it if we're thoughtful. And what does that mean, thoughtful? Just like in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, first chapter, first verse, first purport, Srila Prabhupada gives the prescription how to read Bhagavad Gita. And he says one should study Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly, meaning thoughtful. You read something, and if you don't quite understand it, think about it, research. Like I woke up this morning, I couldn't really put it all together. So I thought about it, and then boom, Krishna said, go back to the description of the spirit of the kingdom of God, that chapter. It's like, yeah. And I just felt so blessed to be reminded to go back and read that, because it just makes me feel so happy to hear about the spiritual sky. So by Krishna's grace, we have all these resources, this facility right in front of us. Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's lectures, and even some writings by devotees that are dedicated to Srila Prabhupada. Very, very inspiring. So we should spend that time that we have hearing these things, associating with each other, hearing these things. And if we don't understand something, be humble. First principle of knowledge is humility. If we don't understand something, reach out to a devotee. And I always say that Vishnu Gadaprabhu and myself, we reach out to each other constantly during the week on just philosophical points, not necessarily about the movement and how the movement's going, but just philosophical points, making sure that we have somewhat of an understanding. Complete understanding may escape us at this point, but at least some understanding that we can share with other devotees. It's so wonderful. So scrutinizingly studying Prabhupada's books. And then it says in that first purport, with the help of a devotee. Okay, carefully reading, thoughtfully reading, with the help of a devotee of Krishna, so that we can stay focused on the path of devotional service. And there's so many wonderful devotees who are sincere about trying to stay close to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada in their understanding. And we should seek out such devotees who can help us develop a deeper trust and faith in Srila Prabhupada, especially in Srila Prabhupada. Everything expands from that, just like in the spiritual world. Everything expands from Krishna. So everything about ISKCON expanded from Prabhupada. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. Everything expanded from Srila Prabhupada. I remember once Satsuru Maharaj said that Srila Prabhupada single-handedly maintained the faith of the devotees in this movement. And when I heard that, I was like, yes. We think we have some faith and attachment to Krishna. Even Lord Brahma says, others may say they understand you, but I don't. So whatever we think we have has been given to us by Srila Prabhupada. And if we hear consistently, systematically, thoughtfully, scrutinizingly, then the seed of our bhakti, the bhakti lata, will flourish, will grow nicely. And if we're careful, we take out the weeds as we're growing the plant of bhakti. And those weeds are described nicely and also in Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Those weeds that are there, I don't remember all of them now, but we know. And those weeds, sometimes if you don't take them out and you're growing something, it can choke the actual plant. So those weeds of sense gratification or mental speculation or material attachments, those are like weeds. And we have to carefully pick them out. And how do we become careful in picking them out? By hearing from Srila Prabhupada. He tells us, don't do this, look out for that, cut down on this, increase that. It's a whole system, the science of devotional service. So I just wanted to share those couple of observations with regards to the importance of hearing about the spiritual world, even though we may not quite understand the nature of the spiritual world. We can, and we are allowed, we're blessed, we're authorized to hear and to repeat what we heard. The other day, I was listening to the lecture from Srila Prabhupada, morning lecture, and he was describing how to preach. And he said, you read 2 lines, then you speak those 2 lines. Don't speculate. That's so interesting. Whatever 2 lines you understand, you speak them. And don't speculate. Whatever Prabhupada has given us, we read it, like here. The most unfortunate persons are the persons who cannot understand the transcendental variegations of the spiritual world. I can say that. I can explain that because it says it right here. I don't have to like figure it out. It's right here. It's very clear. And then again, he says, here in the Bhagavatam, in this verse particularly, it is stressed that people who try to discuss, so then I can say to all of you, we should be discussing more. Why? Because Prabhupada just said it. And the verse is saying, it's regrettable that unfortunate people do not discuss. So I can say with authority, with power, with conviction, as I said many times, in the world of selling, which in Krishna consciousness, we're selling Krishna consciousness to other people. Selling is a transference of conviction. Selling is a transference of conviction. So trying to preach is a transference of conviction. It's not speculation. It's not erudition, not trying to display how much I know and so on and so forth, which we, including myself, we get distracted by that sometimes, want to demonstrate to people my level of, Krishna consciousness, how many things I remember, how many verses, how many stories, but just discussing. It is stressed that people who try to discuss and understand. So that's what this class is about. That's what all classes are about. It's a discussion. It's not a one-way thing where, the person just gave a class and boom. Like Prabhupada at the end of a class would say, any questions? And he would entertain as many questions that devotees would have. Sometimes he would say, that is not a good question. He would chastise lightly. He would say, why you ask that question? And he would go like that. He had fun doing that. So I can say with authority, because Prabhupada's saying it, that we should try to discuss and understand the real spiritual nature of the spiritual sky and the Vaikunthas. And if we do that, we are fortunate. So I'll stop with that. Hopefully there'll be some more thoughts. So I'll pass it back to you, Parikshit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for very, very insightful and the lecture that's really full of a lot of advice also. And thank you especially for the reference to Canto 3 and Chapter 15, description of the spiritual world. I'm going to read the whole chapter.
It's a beautiful chapter.
Yes, a lot of things. There was one, Mataji, she normally comes on, but today she's not on. And she wanted to know more about the spiritual world. So can you please describe to me what the spiritual? She asked sometime back, and I said, all right. So I would tell her what I know. But now there's a whole chapter there. So why just go right to it, I mean, and talk about
Don't
the
read that
spiritual world?
chapter.
Yeah, we could discuss that maybe in 2 sessions, 2 Zoom sessions. Thank you very much. So, dear devotees, this is the time that if you want to share some realizations and or ask questions or have some discussions that you yourself want to, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Hare Krishna.
Vivo,
Hare Krishna Prabhu, my base goes Prabhupada.
Vashti Prabhupada. In the purport to this, the Chaitanya Charitamrita verse, Srila Prabhupada says that Mathura, Dwarka, and Goloka or Gokula they exist eternally and independently. So it's a little tricky for me to understand how I don't have any realization of this, but independently means they're not connected or they're not interactions with each other. Is that right?
Independently. The interaction with each other. I have to think about that. In other words,
in on this plane, Lord Krishna is in Vrindavan, or Gokula, then he goes to Mathura, and then he goes to Dwarka. But so there seems to be an interaction or some kind of relations between them. So I'm just trying to get a handle on it, because you also read that report where Srila Prabhupada says, unless we understand the spiritual world,
yes,
rot in the material world. So anyway,
yeah. So, wow. See, there's an example right there, everyone. Vishnu Gadar is a very senior devotee to all of us, and he's trying to understand deeper and reaching out to all of us. That's the example. Don't think we know, because we only know as much as Srila Prabhupada has revealed to us and as much as Krishna allows us to understand. So I could place that in sort of a material concept and say, like, America is independent of Europe, but there's a process of communication. Now it's been enhanced through the internet and all of that. But I don't think there's an internet in the spiritual sky. But we could say that there must be awareness of each other, if that's what you're pointing to, Vishnu. There must be aware of each other in the spiritual world, because there's unlimited planets, the topmost of which is the Krishna Loka planet. But could be another question: are the residents of Krishna Loka aware of the residents of Vaikuntha? Are the various residents of the Vaikuntha unlimited planets aware of each other? I could say yes. From my limited understanding, I would say yes. But I would appreciate if anyone else has any understanding of that. Anything else to that, Vishnu? Am I on the right path by saying that, right track? That they are aware of each other?
I don't know. I think in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there's some, the Brihad Bhagavatamrita is pretty much a description of the different levels of devotees.
Yeah.
And some devotees are Vaikuntha devotees, and some are further, so it might be explained there, but I don't know. I don't know that.
Yeah.
So you'd think that from on one hand, you say that all the residents of Vaikuntha have the same qualities or the same opulences as Krishna. And one of those opulences is knowing. So from that point, you could argue that they must know.
Yeah.
But unless it's really said directly, it's, so the residents of Vaikuntha know there's a Goloka Vrindavan up there. So do they try to go to Goloka Vrindavan, even though they're, those questions might arise, and I don't know the answer.
Yeah, and those questions do arise repeatedly, because of the spirit soul Satchidananda. So we have knowledge. So we could say, as you pointed out, Vishnu, very cautiously, we could spiritually assume that they are aware of each other. To what degree and how that works, that's a little bit above our pay grade. How the communications between the various Vaikuntha planets, if such a thing exists, how does it work? That's a very interesting thing to think about, and then to research. Okay, here's another point. When we don't understand it, there you go. Now you can research. And by researching, you'll find another reference, and then another reference, and then another reference. Then you get excited. By the time you finish all that research, it might be halfway through your day if you have time, because there's so much there. And Prabhupada will refer to Padma Puran, as you said, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, so many scriptures he refers to. So yes, if you don't understand it, take time, do some research. Now you have Veda base, you have the Prabhupada, the verse book, have so many references. And if you're fortunate, you have the hardbound Prabhupada books, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, like that, you can research. So thank you, Vishnu Gada. Very encouraging, even though we don't have a definitive answer, just discussing it, trying to understand. Understanding is not instantaneous. Even in the mundane world, you don't just go to the first grade in school and understand all about knowledge. Understanding is a process. I'm sure Parikshit could help us with that, because he's highly educated, so he could help us in understanding. When you say understand, it means you got to take some time. So if you truly want to understand Krishna consciousness, it will take time. How long? Bahunam Janma. Who knows? It may take lifetimes. I always say that, how committed are we? Are we committed to that? Janma, birth after birth, Mama Janmani Janmani Shre. Are we committed to that concept that it may take us a few more births? Are we ready to commit to Krishna consciousness, even though we may not achieve the full Krishna consciousness in this lifetime? So in a similar way, when we try to understand the philosophy, it's not like instantaneous. It may take years of research. Are we willing to dedicate years to Srila Prabhupada's books, or are we going to jump here and jump there and try to make it happen sooner? Take the time, scrutinizingly. Give you one quick little pastime. This happened again during my Brahmacharya days in Atlanta. And I remember specifically this one day. It was Swabhas, myself, I believe Vaishasika was there, several Sankirtan devotees. We had a system on Saturday. We would go out on Sankirtan half a day, and then we'd come back and eat a huge prasad lunch feast and then go sleep for about an hour and get up and study together. So this one day we were reading, and we came across a word that none of us were familiar with. It was tantamount. At that time, I didn't know what that word meant, tantamount. And so I remember Swabhas said, "What is that? What does that mean?" And we didn't have the internet, so we had to find a dictionary and this and that. And more or less, it means something which is more or less equal to the other thing, tantamount to. And so what Prabhupada said, we could not understand it without understanding the English word that he used, tantamount. And we just rejoiced when we understood the depth of what Prabhupada was explaining. It was just like Krishna's revelation. So discussing, understanding, and also keep in mind about your opinions. And I wrote this little quote: you have a right to your opinion, but it doesn't mean that your opinion is always right. So in a conversation with devotees, you have to be prepared to accept that you may not have the complete understanding, and another devotee might have a better understanding. If you're not humble, first principle of knowledge, you won't be able to absorb that without some ego. Who do you think you are? I know this. And, you don't want to be challenged. If you don't want to be challenged, then keep your mouth shut. Because you may say something that's not exactly right. Be humble. Allow more input, which enhances the nectar of hearing and chanting in the association of devotees. But if devotees try to associate without humility, it's difficult. It is so difficult. If we're associating in an atmosphere of ego, individual egos, it's very hard to have a decent discussion. So therefore, Prabhupada gave us the process of Ishtagosti, where we can have philosophical discussions and a little bit of debate, little back and forth to enhance our understanding of Krishna consciousness. So just some thoughts. Back to you, Parikshit.
Thank you very much. I pulled this up on the screen and highlighted the place where it says the places of the pastimes of Lord Krishna. The places of the pastimes of Lord Krishna, such as Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan, eternally and independently exist in Krishna Loka. So the places of the pastimes on these places, Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan, eternally and independently exist. I wasn't thinking too deeply into it. I was just taking it on face value that it's talking about.
Yeah.
Because later on, it also mentions that those places are also here in the material world. We know it's on this earth. There's definitely Dwarka, there's Mathura, there's Vrindavan, and the Lord performs pastimes there, especially in Vrindavan. That's way, way over our the way we understand things, even or perceive things. But they're there. I wasn't thinking deeply into it. I was just excited to even hear about it. That's in the first place, that the pastimes there. Vrindavan is forest like Dwarka, based on what's here.
Yeah.
Dwarka is a city, and so is Mathura. And so it gets interesting that, the again, I don't know anything. I've also been gone a long time from the spiritual world. So, but it's just sweet, to know about things that happen in Dwarka here and things that happen in Mathura here. And then in Vrindavan, what happens there, and the Krishna's pastimes, and they happen in different places also.
Yes.
Different universes, and then in the spiritual world also. So it's very, very interesting. Of course, the spiritual world, there's nothing physical. There everything is spiritual. So then the pastimes are wonderful. And the other thing is, when you mentioned lapis lazuli, how it's exciting. I went on the internet and looked at lapis lazuli. It's a blue gem, very, very
Oh,
effulgent. And it's
wow.
blue. It's very, very, very nice. I thought of
It's got, and
importing
it's
it out,
also
but
got flecks of some kind of a flecks of something else inside it. It's not just blue plain sometimes. This
Wow.
is,
yeah, there's some brilliance. I mean, anyway, when I saw I saw a raw stone lapis lazuli, not cut into any kind of jewel, but this
Wow.
raw, and even there with these pictures here and this material, it's still very beautiful, very beautiful. Anyway, that's all I wanted
Oh,
to
that's
add to
wonderful.
this.
Wonderful
Hey,
share. Yeah.
anyone else that would like to share?
I was
Hare Krishna.
wondering. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
No,
excuse
Prabhu, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Anasuya Mataji Haribo.
me. Maybe after we sing it up, then I'm still
Please go ahead, Prabhu.
yeah.
I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench in this thing, unfortunately, because we say that everything in the spiritual world is conscious and personal.
Mm.
And I'm coming about this from a little different angle because, you know, in this, I don't know if you're familiar with the Swaminarayan sect. They're kind of,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So in the Swaminarayan sect, they say that one of the associates of Swaminarayan was the incarnation of the spiritual world.
Mm.
So like a person. Okay, well, I don't know if that's true or not, but anyway, it's an interesting point. So we say that everything in the world, everything is conscious in the spiritual world, and everything is personal. So does that mean that Vrindavan is a person, and that is Vrindavan a different person than Mathura, Dwarka, and Gokul? Are they different persons? Or the same person? Anyway, so I told you I'd cause trouble. You follow the question. You follow the question.
No, I follow. I follow. But I don't have an answer, but I follow the question. It's a good question. Mhm. Let's see. I was reading something here at the end of the purport to verse 18 that we read today. It says here, I think this is what I was remembering. From enjoyment of transcendental variety, the pastimes of Krishna, there have three divisions, and these pastimes are performed in the three abodes, Dwarka, Mathura, and Gokula. When Krishna descends to this universe, he enjoys the pastimes in places of the same name. These places on earth are none different from those original abodes, but they are facsimiles of those original holy places in the transcendental world. They are as good as Sri Krishna himself and are equally worshipable. Lord Chaitanya declared that Lord Krishna, who presents himself as the son of King of Vraja, is worshipable, and that Vrindavan Dham is equally worshipable. So it says here, may not answer that point exactly, they are as good as Sri Krishna. Now, whether they are, I don't know. I can't take it much further than that. That's the only thing I can see that.
Yeah. There was a previous verse in the ones that we read today in Chaitanya Charitamrita was saying how that the spiritual world has the same opulences as Krishna. I think one of the earlier verses that you read several verses.
Mhm.
So just trying to get an understanding of that, what that means. So because usually you think of opulences and there's a possessor of the opulence.
Yes.
So the spiritual world, it says the same opulence. So that means that there's this possessor of the opulence is somehow maybe, I mean, not different than Krishna, but still there's some distinction. That the spiritual world itself has those opulences, and Krishna has the opulences too. Anyway, it's a little tricky.
Well, it's like it reminds you of that conversation that's happened many times about Govardhan Lila, the pastime, and how the Govardhan Hill was separately manifested. And it says a couple statements in that Krishna book. And I remember devotees trying to have conversations about that to figure out that Krishna was there, and then Govardhan Hill was there separately manifested in the form of Krishna. So there was Krishna, Govardhan Hill in this form, right, Vishnu Gada? Is that how it goes?
Yeah,
Krishna?
the separately manifested form of Krishna was
Yeah.
was at least superficially separate, different than the Govardhan Hill itself.
And he was eating all the offerings, right?
Yeah, that separately manifested form was accepting and eating the offerings of the Brijbasis, yeah. And Krishna was separate, and Krishna offered obeisances to that form.
So it's Krishna, Govardhan Hill, and the form, which is all Krishna. So then the only resolution that I have in that is Achintya Beta Beta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. And Prabhupada describes that in so many different ways. So yes, the form of the spiritual world is Krishna. Krishna is the spiritual world because there's nothing but Krishna. Not to go too far into that, but there's nothing but Krishna. As in the beginning, I believe in the Chatur Shloki verses, it talks about how in the beginning, basically it was Brahma and then the Lord, and he only created from the Lord because there was nothing else. And so it says to an effect, in the beginning was I, in the end, in the middle, and at the end will be I, because there's nothing other than the Supreme Lord. So yes, the spiritual world, wherever Krishna is, the spiritual world is there because Krishna is the spiritual world is Krishna. And I don't want to get too confused, so I'll leave it there. It's very complicated.
Hare Krishna. I'm still thinking about this point that Vishnu Gadapava made about an associate of Swami Narayan saying that he's the personification of the spiritual world.
Mm.
And as you said, you don't know whether to believe that or not. But if he is the personification of the spiritual world, then he should be able to manifest the spiritual world.
Like Krishna did.
Yeah. And my question is, has anybody seen a manifestation of the spiritual world from this personality? That would be proof if that is the case. I don't mean to offend them, but if you say you're that way, then if you have that particular property of personification, then the spiritual world should be able to come through you then. And that's my point. As Srila Prabhupada has in fact told us that when somebody says, I am Krishna,
you can
ask nicely to get their universal form manifest so we can see.
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm also thinking of. I don't want to say I'm doubting, but I just wondered if anybody has seen the spiritual world to this particular personality. I just say we should Prabhupada and leave it at that, I don't try to get anybody. People talk about it and said, well, listen, if you're Vaishnava, Prabhupada's giving the mercy, you're chanting 16 rounds and not where else you want to go. You can't go to the spiritual world. Right? And his mercy allows us to chant 16 rounds and still get the favor of the Lord to go back home. Not to say that these things are not there. You bring it up, it's nice, but I kind of burrow into my shell, which is covered all with Srila Prabhupada. When I hear these things, I'm going, all right, that's there, but what is the proof of it, and so on. So anyway. Yeah.
So I just want to throw in real quick again from what we were reading earlier about the description of spirituals, kingdom of God. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, here in the Bhagavatam, in this verse particularly, it is stressed that people who try to discuss and understand the real spiritual nature of the spiritual sky and Vaikuntha are fortunate. So in conclusion, we're fortunate. We're trying to understand. Doesn't mean we know we're expert, be careful, but we're trying. Prabhupada is validating the effort of this discussion today. We're trying to understand. We don't quite understand, but Prabhupada says we can try. We can try to understand. Okay, and I've always said this, don't try to act like you're the authority, that this information came from you, speaking in such a way that some things do come from you. The realizations, that comes from you by the grace of Krishna, Dhammi Buddhi Yogamtam. But this knowledge Prabhupada gave it. Okay, so we're just trying to repeat. As he said, if you know a few sentences, then just repeat that. So I can repeat this, and I'm going to think about it all day. Here in the Bhagavatam, in this verse particularly, it is stressed at people who try to discuss, just that much, try to discuss and understand the real spiritual nature of the spiritual sky, Vaikuntha, are fortunate. So I'm going to consider myself fortunate. I hope all of you do the same. How fortunate you are and were to be here today, as in every day. That's why it says, Nasta Praisa Bhadresu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevya, every day. Oh, I can't go to class every day. Oh, excuse me, don't you have Bhagavatams in your house? Or don't you have access to the internet? You can hear Prabhupada's lectures, or if you prefer, you can hear lectures from other devotees, but I personally prefer listening to Prabhupada's lecture every morning. So I'm hearing Bhagavatam, whether I can make it to a class, not make it to a class. I don't take those excuses. Like I remember one devotee in Atlanta when Prabhupada came here, Kardama Muni Prabhu, he was cooking in the kitchen. Prabhupada was giving class. And then Prabhupada said something in the class. He said, who's making that? What is that clicking noise? Because they were cooking and cutting on the table. And Kardama Muni said, hearing Prabhupada on the speaker, because the speaker was in the kitchen. He said, it was the same Prabhupada I used to listen to every day on the speaker in the kitchen before Prabhupada came. So I just thought Prabhupada was just giving lectures, just like, listening to a tape. But Prabhupada was talking about him making noise in the kitchen. It was just so funny. So I'm hearing Prabhupada every day. Is it Prabhupada or is it artificial intelligence? It's Prabhupada. And Prabhupada would call that his separated energy. And he said it. I'm speaking into this recording device and it's going there. That is my separated energy. So you can be with Prabhupada every single day, hearing his voice, learning. And as he says, become fortunate. Try to understand. I love that. Try to understand. Haribo.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Vishigana Prabhu, also your
Thank you,
contribution.
Vishigana.
Always valuable and relishable. Thank you very
Relish
much.
those thoughtful men, right?
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Thank you, dear devotees, for coming on to listen. And we always come out more educated and more hopefully excited about Krishna consciousness. We are fortunate to discuss things about there's one more question somebody asked. Damadav has raised his hand, so go ahead.
For it.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, all glories to Prabhupada.
It's a long time. I didn't hear you. It's very relishing, as you said. I'm relishing this time with all the senior devotees discussing all the understanding about the spiritual world. So it's always great for me to hear these things from senior devotees, of course. So I'm the junior most over here, so I will speak on my level. So one thing was I just wanted to share one realization.
Yes, please.
When like I'm reading couple of small books with senior devotees, Parikshit Prabhu and another devotee from New York. So when I read those books, as I'm reading those books, I feel that how uh, scholarly Srila Prabhupada was with his Sanskrit knowledge and how well read he was with respect to meaning. He knew Upanishad, he used to quote from Upanishads all the time, and not just like very specific ones. He will quote from like any number of verses, like he can quote like, so he knew a lot of like, pretty much the whole of the Vedic literature, I would say. So it's like we should make it a point that we are reading Prabhupada books before any other books.
Yes.
I feel that was one thing. And I had two questions, Prabhu.
Yes.
So you were talking about your brahmachari days, that you used to wake up like 2:30 in the morning and then get your rounds done and then read Bhagavatam. So like, I feel like you had that intensity to keep going every day. So what happens with me is like some days I will have that intensity, other days I don't have that intensity, and somewhere um, how to keep that intensity going? Like it's a it's a question because
Well,
yeah.
let me take
Go ahead,
that one
Prabhu.
part first. So on that point, I had as I said, I had a plan. And I'm also kind of a sleepy person, right? So in the Brahmacharya ashram in the Atlanta temple, it was upstairs above the temple room. And there was a hallway. And there was 1, 2, 3 or 4 brahmachari rooms. And each brahmachari room had about 5 or 7, sometimes 8 or 9 devotees in the room. No separate rooms, just a big room. So I would sleep in the hallway. Why did I sleep in the hallway? Because I wanted to get up. And I knew that devotees who were better at getting up than me would be walking around making noise and wake me up. So that was part of my plan, because I wanted to get up at 2:30, but I knew it was difficult. So I had to come up with a scheme, with a plan to get up, which meant put in a situation where things would help me get up. Or I had, now you have your cell phone and you put on there, your timers and whatever. I use that as well. I have my timer set for a certain time, and I use my phone ringing sound, which is loud and noisy, wakes me up. So you have to make some kind of a plan, because if you think that you're going to always be enthusiastic, and it may not happen. You have to practice. You have to practice doing these things. It's not like automatically you're going to be enthusiastic. So enthusiasm, firm conviction, patience, but you have to have a plan. So Prabhu, just don't give up. If you miss it one day, do it better the next day. It's just like in the world, the material world. You just have to keep practicing. You never give up. I heard a guy the other day, I was doing some research on, because I'm playing guitar and I'm trying to do it better for Prabhupada and Krishna. So this guy was saying, stop all your complaining. Just practice. He says, don't take any fancy, just practice, 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 and you'll get it eventually. And I said, wow, what a good instruction. So Prabhu, to me, that's the best instruction. Just keep trying. Keep trying to do it better. So you can see, so you'll become inspired not by your necessary effort, but by the grace of Krishna. Does that make sense, Sarvanga Prabhu? By the grace of Krishna, by you trying to do what Prabhupada said to do, Krishna will bless you with enthusiasm. What do you
Yes,
think?
the last line I understood. Recently, there are lots of things happening like that, so
Yeah.
I understand that one. And
So
the
you had another
second
question?
question,
Go ahead. Yeah.
go ahead, Prabhu.
No, I'm saying you had a second question, right?
Yes, Prabhu. So we were talking about, you just read one line towards the end that we should try to understand that line. Can you repeat that line again?
It's at the end of verse number 15. No. Yeah, let me see. Let me make sure I have it right for you. Yes, in Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 15, and this verse number is 23. So at the end of the purport, it says, here in the Bhagavatam, and this is the last paragraph, here in the Bhagavatam, in this verse particularly, it is stressed that people who try to discuss and understand the real spiritual nature of the spiritual sky and the Vaikunthas are fortunate. Is that what you're referring to, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. So, like many times, Prabhupada has also said that we shouldn't try to look for the form of Krishna and try to understand Krishna. It will be revealed to you. So, how to understand these 2 points? Or am I making a mistake in understanding the line in the purport?
But he's saying specifically, the Vaikunthas, the spiritual sky. He didn't say specifically Krishna. That's a similar discussion, but it's a different discussion from what he just said. So sticking to what Prabhupada just said, he said, and I'll read it again, here in the Bhagavatam, in this verse particularly, so he's very specific wording, this verse particularly, it is stressed that people who try to discuss and understand the real spiritual nature of the spiritual sky and the Vaikunthas are fortunate. Understanding Krishna is a whole, how to say another, but it's a whole different time frame of discussion, the spiritual world, because it's none different from Krishna. We could easily say that, but he's being very specific in this verse particularly. So that's what he's saying in this particular thing that I read. Yes. So it's hard to understand Krishna. It's hard to understand the spiritual world, but if we try, that's the point that's being made, then we're fortunate. We may never understand Krishna. Lord Brahma said, others may say they understand, but I don't. So we may never understand Krishna, but we should try. Is it okay, Sarvanga Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Please
thinking,
keep coming to give classes, Prabhu.
Oh, thank you. I'll
We
try my
relish
best.
your classes a lot. Even
Thank you.
Vishnu Gada Prabhu and Geeta Mataji. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other devotees are also good, but now we need more and more guidance from the seniors, so we will have more understanding.
Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Back to you, Parikshit Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Just wanted to make one quick comment, and that's just what was coming to my mind when you were reading that those who are discussing about the spiritual world says that they are fortunate. And I'm saying, why fortunate? Well, what hit me was because they're not discussing anything material then. we pushed our mind to the spiritual. And that we're fortunate in that sense. That's as far as my mind went with that.
Beautiful, beautiful thought.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Mahachita Makita Paramparam. Like that.
Yes.
Because the devotees talk about spiritual things, then they get excited about it. So the discussion about the spiritual world, as we all can see, and those of us who can't really see, we're all smiles the whole time because it's about the spiritual world. Hare
Beautiful. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. It was a very relishable lecture.
But did you enjoy it?
I'm gonna keep quiet about that. Time.
Haribo.
Patitano, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namaha.
Haribo. All glories to Prabhupada. Haribo.
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Glory to Prabhupada.